I have leveling trees to help and hold your hand throughout the entire leveling process. Look at this. We've got 3 different life trees to help you out. You need some more life? I've got a life tree. Damage, I got the damage tree. You want a little bit of both for a little bit of money? I've got those as well, where you get damage and some life. Also, it wouldn't be a full build guide if I didn't include some real nutty stuff, like a low life tree, as well as all these gear sets and a low life gear set. Look at this. We didn't even talk about skills. All right, there's the whole leveling section. There's a Spellslinger section. Once you hit level 24, there's Slinger Mapping, and then there's an entire low life setup. So please, if you're using the POB, make sure you match them up, right? We've got life, 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 and 2 energy shield trees. We go over to the items. We've got League Start Life, 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 and an Energy Shield setup. Make sure you're matching up the low life setup with the low life gear and, of course, the low life tree, which there are 2 of. Max block and big, juicy cluster jewel damage. Anyways, let's get into the nitty gritty. Make sure if you yoink this, motherfucker, you better be subscribing, all right? Enough with this. Welcome back. I'm Tripolar Bear, and this is a Cold.Occultist guide. In this guide, we'll have a League Start introductory version of the build that uses Spellslinger to fire out many cold spells every time we use our wand attack. We're going to take this cold spell slinger version all the way through the game and eventually upgrade it to a low life cold snap and vortex build. This build is going to be such an easy build to play for those looking to complete the Maven encounters. With our consistent damage over time, max block from glancing blows, and the constant freezing and chilling of enemies combined with a temporal chains curse, should make killing all 10 of those bosses an absolute breeze as you run around these omega slowed unique boss monsters and keep a safe distance. I've also included a low life version that you can transition into if you're a huge gamer and want to deal even more damage and survive much longer. The main abilities that we'll use for our League Start version will be Creeping Frost, which shoots an icy projectile, dealing area damage on impact and leaving a chilling area, dealing cold damage over time and causing the area to creep towards other enemies. Our next ability, and the main one that we'll be using in red maps, is going to be Vortex. Vortex creates an icy explosion around yourself and leaves a whirling pool of cold damage over time. What makes this ability so amazing is that we can put this on our left mouse button and it will automatically be used anytime we're moving. When we combine this With our second Spellslinger ability, Frostbolt, our Vortex will also spawn on each Frostbolt we shoot out, leaving a majority of the screen with Vortex swirls sapping away the enemy's life. Our main ability will scale off of gem levels, cold damage, spell damage, and damage over time multiplier, including cold damage over time multiplier, as well as increased damage over time. Our main clear is going to come from Creeping Frost at the start and the Frostbolt Vortex combo as well. This gives us 2 layers of cold damage over time everywhere across the screen, giving us very easy, good, and consistent damage across the whole screen, as well as chilling and freezing everything, giving us a ton of survivability while we map as well. For single target, we'll use Frost Bomb to apply cold exposure and a Hex Touch setup to apply the Frostbite curse, and later on, Temp Chains as well. Then, we'll use Stormbrand and Orb of Storms in a trigger wand to apply Elemental Equilibrium. Although, if you don't have a trigger wand yet, that's alright, you can just use the Stormbrand on its own. We'll also be using Vol Righteous Fire for a huge damage boost, while our Creeping Frost and Vortex drains the life away from the boss. Once we do get that trigger wand, all you need to do is pop your Vol RF and use your wand attack. It's going to be such a breeze. So make sure you're unveiling every wand that you can so that you can eventually unveil the trigger socketed spells on the wand. For our defenses, we will have 75 attack and spell block alongside a 5% life on block shield later on. Since our main damage is cold damage, and because we have a lot of chill effect, everything nearby will be chilled. We will also freeze enemies from our Occultist Ascendancy, and if the enemy was frozen, they're automatically chilled again after they come out of their freeze. This creates ever slow and easy to dodge enemies, while also causing enemies to deal 20% reduced damage to us, since they'll be chilled and cursed. Combine this with 5k plus life, and it'll be very difficult for bosses to hit this build, let alone take it down when they do. For our Ascendancy points, in Normal Lab, we'll take Void Beacon for the reduction of nearby cold resistance and completely stopping enemies from regenerating life. In Cruel Lab, we'll take Frigid Wake, giving us chill and freeze immunity. 15% more cold damage, which was a buff, by the way. A 33% chance to freeze chilled unique enemies every 4 seconds, and a 100% chance to freeze chilled non-unique enemies every 4 seconds as well. We will also, from Frigid Wake, get a 10% reduced damage taken from chilled enemy hits, which is wild. In Merciless Lab, we'll take Malediction to apply an additional curse to give us extra curse effect, and yet another 10% reduced damage taken buff from the enemies you curse having Malediction. This makes them deal 10% reduced damage taken and causes them to take 10% increased damage. Now that's a lot of damage. In Uber Lab, we'll be taking Vile Bastion to regenerate Energy Shield and providing us with stun immunity while we have any amount of energy shield at all, making our gameplay much smoother. Next, let's talk about our main damage links. So, for Vortex, we'll link this to Elemental Focus, since we will chill with our Creeping Frost and later on Cold Snap. We don't need to worry about not applying elemental ailments. We'll also link this to Efficacy for more spell damage and damage over time, as well as increased duration. Controlled Destruction gives us more spell damage, Swift Affliction gives us more damage over time, and Hypothermia for more cold damage over time. For our Frostbolt setup, to spawn additional vortexes all across the land and around our whole screen, we'll simply use Spellslinger and Frostbolt alongside the Threshold Jewel Frozen Trail, which gives our Frostbolts 2 additional projectiles and 40 increased projectile speed per second as they travel outwards. filling the screen with frostbolts, therefore filling the screen with vortexes as well. For the creeping frost setup, we'll make sure that we put this in our helmet to take advantage of the concentrated effect we get from our rim gaze. We'll use Spellslinger, Creeping Frost, Hypothermia, and Bone Chill. Bone Chill is so wild on this build because the chill effect that we leave on the ground with Creeping Frost is going to boost our Vortex damage out the wazoo. This Bone Chill support is probably the most important support in the entire build. Putting Bone Chill on our Creeping Frost boosts our Vortex damage by 50%. So make sure that you have the Bone Chill on your Creeping Frost setup or you will lose an insane amount of damage. For our offensive aura, to get an extra 28% more spell damage boost, we'll be using Vol Righteous Fire. To apply our 2 curses, we'll be using Power Siphon since it's a free culling strike and gives us power charges that helps us crit much more likely so that we can keep Elemental Overload up. So, to this Power Siphon, we will use Hex Touch, Frostbite, which gives minus 46 cold resistance, extra chance to freeze, and freeze duration. We'll also link Temporal Chains, giving nearby enemies 29% less action speed and unique enemies 14. This also causes other effects on cursed enemies to expire 40% slower. Once we unveil the trigger craft, I want you to craft that onto whatever wand that you can and use the following setup. We'll use Frost Bomb to apply cold exposure, giving an additional minus 25% cold resistance. And also, we'll put in our trigger wand, Stormbrand and Orb of Storms to apply Elemental Equilibrium. For our cast on damage taken setup, we will be using Immortal Call to give us 26 less physical and elemental damage taken. For our movement ability, we'll use Flame Dash and Arcane Surge at a low level to gain more spell damage and giving us extra mana regeneration. You need to make sure you understand 2 very important things when leveling any build, and for this first one, any spellcaster build. Let's talk about the wand vendor recipe. Very quickly, the wand recipe is extremely important as it gives us a very nice source of flat added cold, lightning, or fire damage. So we'll use a magic wand and we'll vendor that with a normal sapphire ring at level 8. And later on, after you've killed a few essences, you can use one of those to use the vendor recipe with a rare sapphire ring, giving us more cold damage with a higher rarity of sapphire ring vendored with the recipe. So a magic wand at level 20, a rare sapphire ring at level 8, a normal one, and an alteration gives us the wand that we'll be using until we hit maps. Do not forget to take advantage of the crafting bench. As soon as you get out of the Twilight Strand and have your hideout unlocked, you can go there and, for 1 transmutation orb, craft a 16 to 20% elemental resistance on any piece of your gear. This is so insanely powerful that you are able to cap your resistances so early, as long as you are vendoring unidentified items, getting those transmutation shards, and using those to craft resistances on every piece that you can. Let's talk about what's in the POB really quick. Let's go through the leveling skills, what you want to use, and how you're going to level and go through the maps. We don't need to talk about the tree, just follow along. We've got the 1 to 12 all the way up to the 70, right? I have it in little increments with reminders to do your normal lab, your cruel lab, your merc lab, and lastly, your Uber lab while picking up these jewels as well. We've got a lot of life on this tree, a little bit less with some more damage on this one, and then we have life and damage, but you gotta get a large thread of hope and make sure your resistances are fine there. All right, we've got those trees, these 3 when you get to maps, but how are you gonna get to maps? Let's talk about the leveling section. Of course, since we are a witch, we're gonna use Stormblast Mind. with swift assembly and added lightning. This is very nice. You throw the mines down. Each mine is going to make the enemies take increased damage, and then you just blow them all up, right? If they're all on the ground, enemies are taking a lot more damage. So you stack them up and then blast your load. And with that, we're going to use Orb of Storms. So put the Orb of Storms down, stack all your mines down. Every mine you put down while you're in the Orb of Storms is going to trigger that Orb of Storms, the ooze, right? OOS, Orb of Storms, all right? It's going to trigger the ooze, so you're going to be putting mines down, dealing damage. You blast the mine load, and you deal even more. We'll use Frost Bomb as well. Frost Bomb applying some cold exposure, because we will be using the wand recipe in the notes and in the video. For movement, we'll use Frost Blink until we get Flame Dash. Then we do Flame Dash with the level 1 Arcane Surge. In Act 2, get the Skitter Bots and use Herald of Ice. In Act 3, use Conductivity. And once you hit level 24, we're going to do the Spellslinger setup. You will need a few alterations to buy these, but that's all right. You should be IDing rares and vendoring them for alteration shards at this point anyway. If you don't have enough to do them all, if you don't have the links, that's fine. The Orb of Storms and Stormblast Mine is very, very nice still. But if you do, we're going to do Spellslinger, which is going to trigger our Frostbolt on every wand attack. And we're going to do a Creeping Frost setup as well with Spellslinger, so it triggers the Creeping Frost cold dot spell. With Pierce, so it pierces through 2 additional targets, going up to 4. And LMP, so we get 2 more Creeping Frost shooting out. Our Vortex setup is going to be Vortex, Control Destruction, Ally Focus, Efficacy. You can throw this on your left mouse button, and you can just let it rock, alright? You just got to be a little bit careful with your mana flask. Alright, just spam that as you go with your Quicksilver, with your Silver, whatever you got. You just got to make sure you're using that mana flask every once in a while. Our Frost Bomb. On the Frost Bomb setup, we will use Frost Bomb just to apply cold exposure for bosses only. Don't use this while you're running around. Just do your normal wand attack to trigger all of those spell-slung spells. But linked to the Frost Bomb is going to be a Bone Chill, so that when we do chill a boss enemy, they're going to take increased cold damage based on the chill effect. Now, to trigger the spell slinging, we need a wand attack, and that wand attack is going to be at the start a Frenzy, so that we can get Frenzy charges, giving us more damage, attack speed, and cast speed. We'll link to Frenzy, Hex Touch, and Frostbite, so every time we shoot the Frenzy, it's going to trigger all of our spells, and also, whatever we hit with this projectile, this Frenzy attack is going to get cursed with Frostbite. And we'll still use Flame Dash and Arcane Surge. So, you hit maps. You should start with the Lots of Life tree until you're comfortable enough to maybe sacrifice some life here and there. Go to the damage or at least the hybrid tree. For the League Start gear, really quickly, it's super simple. We're just going to use the wand recipe. We're going to vendor a magic wand with a rare sapphire ring and an alteration to get one of these bad boys. And on this, you can craft some resistances as well if you need on your crafting bench. Every other slot's going to be life and res with the crafter resistance all the way down. All right, so you leveled through the campaign. Now you're ready to map. Let's say that you've got a Tabula Rasa, which is one of the only items in the cheap mapping setup. In that Tabula, or if you only have a 4 link, that's fine. You could just drop these 2 right at the bottom. We're going to do a Vortex setup for our 6 link with Ally Focus. Since we'll be chilling with Creeping Frost, we don't have to worry about not chilling with the Vortex. We'll use Efficacy, Control Destruction, Swift Affliction, and Hypothermia. We're going to use a 2-link Spellslinger Frostbolt setup still, and we will be using as well 2 Frozen Trail setups. So our Frostbolt fires 2 additional, but if we use 2, it's 4 additional projectiles. So using this is going to let our Vortex spam everywhere. You can see as a line on the text, if the caster targets near their Frostbolt projectiles, it will explode from a number of those projectiles instead, destroying the Frostbolt, but instead laying a Vortex. So the Spellslinger setup is going to be a little different coming out of maps. We're going to do Spellsling, Creeping Frost, now Hypothermia, and Bone Chill to give increased effect of chills and giving it a little bit more damage. This is mainly so our Vortex does insane damage. We'll use in our weapon 2 a Flame Dash, Arcane Surge, and Vol Righteous Fire. Only the Vol Righteous Fire, as this gives wild damage. Look at this. We turn it on, we get 28 more damage, right? It gives 28 more spell damage. Who would have thought it gives us 28 more damage? That's wild. Our wand is going to be Power Siphon. Now that we've done Uber Lab and we've picked up Malediction, we can apply an additional curse, and that curse is going to be Temp Chains and still Frostbite. So we're still applying the Frostbite and the Temp Chains curse, but we're going to use Power Siphon so that we get a bunch more projectiles and a free Culling Strike. Cast when damage taken in the boots is going to be linked to Immortal Call, just a little bit less damage taken. And now, in your wand, until you get a trigger wand, you can use just Frost Bomb and Stormbrand. But when you do get the trigger wand, I want you to put the Frost Bomb, Stormbrand, and Orb of Storms in there so that every time you use a skill, it's going to trigger all 3 of those spells. You can see here, trigger a socketed spell when you use a skill. So we'll use our Vortex, we'll use our Power Siphon, any of those will trigger these, and you just want to hover over the boss or at least be near them with your mouse cursor so that it lays a Frost Bomb, Stormbrand, and an Orb of Storms on them. That is very important to get the Frost Bomb cold exposure, as well as applying Elemental Equilibrium, which we will have taken for maps. This gives us 43% damage for our Vortex. That is wild. It's so good, and you need to be up on it, all right? The Stormbrand is super important, and it's very easy. You throw it on there, and you just don't spam your Creeping Frost, or you're going to be making the cold res go up, right? You just do a Creeping Frost, get your Vortexes on there. If the boss is moving around, just do it again, right? Get another Stormbrand on there, constantly ticking and dealing lightning damage. Therefore, constantly ticking and giving -50 to elements that are not lightning, right? Stormbrand deals lightning, so it gives -50 fire and cold. That's really, really good. So for your gear, once you hit maps, I want you to grab a +1 level of all cold spells wand. Until you get the trigger wand, you can use just this. You can craft some spell damage on there until you get the trigger craft. On your shield, also just grab life and the +1 cold spell skill mod, so that all of our cold skills get +2 levels from the wand and from the shield combined. Our helmet's going to be Rim Gaze. If you can get the Vortex enchant, that's really good. If you can't, don't worry about it. That's all right. This alone, without an enchant or anything, is really, really good. Gives us a free conk effect. It gives us 30 cold damage. It gives us the amazing cold damage over time multiplier, which is so, so good. You gotta get this, and it shouldn't be hard. It's a very cheap, very easy to get unique. Our body is going to be a Tabula. It's a free 6-link setup. Everybody uses these. It's so nice to have early in the league. Swapping your gems out so easy, and hey, a lot of people are corrupting them. You can get a +2 socketed duration super, super cheap very early in the league, or AoE. Any of these gives a ton of damage, right? Putting the Tabula on that has a +2 level of duration or AoE gems gives us 28% of our damage, which is very good. The gloves, max life and res. Boots, you want move speed, life, and res. And the rest of our gear is just going to be life and res. But on the amulet, we want to get a dexterity base. And on our rings, we want to get dexterity alongside the life and resistance. For the flask, we're going to use instant and staunching on our life flask to instantly recover 900 plus life. Our mana flask, if you need it, which you might not for this build. We do get a lot of mana regen. So if you don't need it, you can drop the mana flask. You know, try it out every once in a while. See if you need this. Because you could drop it and you could get what is going to be our next flask, which is a Roomies. You could get a Roomies early. You could get a Taste of Hate. Otherwise, you could just pick up a Granite or Jade flask as well. But assuming you're having mana problems, just grab an Enduring Eternal mana flask. On our Basalt, which we will use for the 15 fizz damage reduction, because we don't really have fizz damage reduction anywhere else. We'll get it on our flask, and we'll get staunching on there as well, just in case against that pesky bleed from corrupted blood. Our quartz, which we'll use for phasing and a chance to dodge attacks and spell hits, is going to have warding, giving us curse immunity. So elemental weakness, Assassin's Mark, temporal chains, vulnerability, none of those will be a problem while we map. As long as we have this flask up, we'll be immune to all of them. Our Quicksilver is going to be Alchemist Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline. If you can't get this huge long string of words, right, it's going to be kind of expensive at the start. Just go ahead and get the movement speed as a roll on your Quicksilver. That's totally fine. Or whatever you have on the Quicksilver is all right. You just got to use what you got. But this is what you want in the end. On our jewels, I want you to get Cold Damage Over Time Multiplier. It's very important to get this on as many jewels as you can. And you want to get some life, right? The third option, if you can get Cold Dot Multi Life and something else, if that's not too expensive, just get spell damage with a shield, cold damage, or just global damage or damage over time. There's a ton of different damage things you can get, but the most important two things to get are life and Cold Dot Multi. Now, as you upgrade every piece of gear, when you go through the maps, I want you to try to get a level of all cold spell skill gem wand and get a Cold Dot Multi roll on there, as well as the trigger craft. If you can't find one at a reasonable price, don't worry about it. Just keep the level of all cold spell skill gems and get that trigger a socketed spellcraft on there. That is super important, so you don't have to press the Stormbrand and the Frostbomb buttons, right? It makes your playstyle so much easier. On the shield, this is huge. This is huge. On the shield, on a Shaper shield, from item level 78 upwards, you can get the Life on Block mod, right? We recover 5% of our life when we block. That's huge, right? Porcupines are no longer any problem at all. There's so much stuff, all the little hits, they don't even add up because we recover 5% every time we block. On average, it's going to take 9 pristine fossils and 9 primitive resonators. These should be super, super cheap. It's just the life fossil and the 1 socket resonator. It should be like 10, maybe 20 chaos on the league start to craft a shield like this. Since the item level can be Shaper Influence, item level 68, the only thing that you would want to use higher item level shield for is for higher potential life rolls. A very nice one beginning at like 73, right? At item level 73, you can roll like 70 plus life. The higher the item level, the more potential life you could roll. But if you have to settle for 68, that's totally fine. This life mod is way more important than a higher life roll. That would just be a slight min-max, and then you just craft whatever res you need on there. We're going to keep Rim Gaze. Keep an eye out for the Vortex enchant or any potential other enchants as well. So in our chest piece, if you can, it's fine to use that +2 Corrupted Tabula, but if you can, get a 6-link max life and energy shield Vol Regalia, giving us a lot more life, right? The Tabula gives us a lot of damage, but this gives us a lot of life. We get almost 300 life and almost 900 energy shield from this chest piece alone, and it doesn't even have that wild of mods. We get to 5,500 life and 2k ES now with this build, which is like 7,500 effective HP. That is so, so good with all of the block and whatnot. Very, very cool. The gloves are going to be Hunter Influence so that we can get that cold damage over time multiplier, get that life and resistance as well. The boots, life, move speed, resistance, and if you can't get the enchant, 8% chance to dodge spells if we've taken spell damage is pretty good. The amulet is going to be a Redeemer Influence, if you can, that gives +1 level of all cold spell skill gems, or just +1 level of all cold skill gems. If you can get some life and res on there, that's cool. The anointment we want to use is Command of Steel. Because we're blocked, this anointment does give us 75% damage, since we have 75% block chance. It's a 1-to-1 ratio, which is pretty nice. The rings, still life, dex, and res. The belt, still life, resistance. And if wherever you can get some chaos res, that's a very good idea as well. We will be exchanging that mana flask, as long as you don't need it, for a Rumi's Concoction, which is going to cap our spell and attack block. That's very cool. And it also gives us 3k armor, which is going to help with little physical hits. We'll still use the Basalt, the Quartz, and the Quicksilver. And we're still going to use 2 Frozen Trails to get a bunch more Frostbolts. And then wherever you can get these Cold Dot Multi jewels at as well. Now, For the low life, this is where it gets tricky. To calculate your damage, you have to unenable all of these. I know it's a little tedious, but you should only have to do it once. You have to unenable all of these, and then I want you to enable these so that all of the auras are being counted, and so you can see exactly how much mana reservation is being used up by what. Because there are some levels that are very important to keep in mind on these gems. Also, so we have the low life skills enabled. We have our low life setup on our item gear set enabled, but now we have to go to the low life tree. It's with ES right here. So the energy shield, the ES tree, is going to start with max block so that we have defenses. And if you've got some money, I included a huge cluster setup, which gives a ton of damage, but we do lose that max block. For some people, that's pretty worth it, right? We get almost 1 million more damage. That's so good. That's so good. 3 million on just the Vortex, and on the Cold Snap, another 1.1. That's a lot of damage. So for this setup, for the max block, which is what I'll talk about, the cluster is very nice, but very quickly, the clusters are fairly simple. It's just going to be the elemental area of effect. Blast freeze, very, very good. Freezes are going to spread to other nearby enemies, which is not the largest radius of 12, but it's going to help you survive a lot more now that you don't have the max block. And when you freeze things, everything else is going to get frozen around it, which is very, very helpful. We're going to get the deep chill on the large as well as our mediums, as 10 cold dot multi and effective cold ailments is going to make it easier to chill and freeze and give us more damage. Exposure therapy giving us dot multi and a total of 60 chaos resistance against damage over time. Very helpful since we only have 0 right now. And the smalls are going to be energy shield and energy from naught, giving us 430 energy shield for every one of these. That is really good, bringing us to a total of 8,700. Now, you might have seen this in our life base. We're going to use a Thread of Hope to come up here and get the Breath of Rime, Heart of Ice, and then pick up the Snowforge. But also on the energy shield version, you see we're going to pick up the Arcane Focus and this Int Node. It gives a ton of intelligence, which is very nice. So very quickly on the energy shield tree, we're going to get mana reservation since we're low life. We're still going to pick up this block, which is very nice. Helps us hit the block chance cap. We get EE still. We come down here, get more mana reserve, and we get the mana reserve up here as well. Still keeping all of the hybrid and whatnot, getting the shield and cold dot multi stuff. But we're also going to pick up Wicked Ward, which is going to make our energy shield recharge not interrupt when we take damage. Very, very helpful on bosses. So it's when we're recharging our energy shield, right? When you take damage, after a while it starts to recharge. Well, if you take damage while it's recharging, it stops and you gotta wait again. This just lets it keep going. So if you keep taking damage while it recharges, you'll keep recharging. It's very, very nice. For our skills, the Vortex setup is going to be exactly the same, except we'll get some awakened versions of these. The Storm Brand, Frostbomb, Orb of Storms, and our Trigger Wand, exactly the same. But now, in our shield, which is going to be Prism Guardian, it's going to be very important that you put your auras in this. Your auras will get +2 levels. They'll have blood magic, so they'll reserve your life instead of your mana. And they'll have reduced mana reservation, which is extremely, extremely important. Being on low life is very good, right? This is why we use a Chevrons. So chaos damage, right? Chaos damage does not bypass energy shield. Normally it does, right? If you have ES and you take chaos damage, it goes straight to life. It goes right through ES. But with Shavs, it doesn't. So with this shield, with Prism Guardian, we put auras in the shield. And if you look at my life, I have unreserved life, right? I only have 200 out of 1,000 life unreserved, right? It's all squished down like when you pop auras on mana. And if you see this, it's like reserving all of our life, right? Putting 3 big auras in the shield, having them socketed to blood magic reserves a lot of our life, which is good because we can be in a state called low life. This node gives us 30% more spell damage, which accounts for 600,000 dot DPS, giving us even more. So not only do we get to use awesome auras like Hatred, Zealotry, Hatred giving more cold damage, Zealotry giving more spell damage, and Consecrated Ground, Malevolence giving more damage over time, and skill effect duration, right? We get to use 3 huge auras, and we get to use Pain Attunement to get 30% more on top of all that. That is why low life is so good. All right. We're going to use in our helmet, which is still going to be a Rim Gaze, a Vol Cold Snap, which we'll also use on boss encounters. We will use this mainly for the Bone Chill, right? The Bone Chill is a majority of our Vortex's damage, right? We go from 2.7 to 1.8. We get nearly 1 million damage on our Vortex by having a Bone Chill in a Cold Snap setup, which you'll just use on monster packs. It's just a cold damage over time effect that kind of goes onto the ground. Very easy to use. You just point and you click. And to that, we'll link Efficacy and Hypothermia. We're still going to use Frostbite and Temp Chains, but now, for ease of use, we'll put them in a Blasphemy setup. So they'll become Curse Auras, which is very, very handy. This makes it so we don't need a Curse on Hit or Hex Touch setup or anything. They're just always going to be cursing anything within our Blasphemy radius. We will also, of course, be using a Discipline with a Vol Discipline button for an emergency whoopsie. Vol Discipline making you and nearby allies energy shield recharge not delayed by damage. So you can pop Vol Discipline if you take some damage and you'll start recharging all the way back up. It's a very, very nice kind of like panic defense button. A very good defense cooldown. Now this is important. You need to use a level 1 Clarity to make sure that you have enough mana regeneration and unreserved mana where you can actually use Vortex and Cold Snap consistently. We will also have a Flame Dash and Arcane Surge setup still, as well as a level up to 11 Vitality, which is going to give us some nice energy shield regen, just a little bit. If you want, you can use a lower level Vitality, but 11 seems to be a pretty nice sweet spot. This is where you need to adapt your version a little bit. You might not have as much mana, you might have some more. You either need to level up Vitality, take it out, or you can level it up a little bit more as well. But let's talk about the low life items now that we talked about the low life skills. So you're going to keep that same exact wand, or you're going to have a better one over time. It's going to have plus level, cold dot multi, and the very important trigger socketed spell. The Prism Guardian, letting us reserve our auras on our life. Rim Gaze giving a lot of damage. Chevrons, letting chaos damage not bypass energy shield. That's very important. This is the only reason we use Chevrons, is that we can reserve our life with mana and not get instantly killed by chaos damage just going right through our ES, right? I only have 200 life. So if I don't have a Chevrons, I'm gonna die instantly. And that's not fun. All right, gloves, cold dot multi, and energy shield. Now that we're an ES build, you don't need life. You get as much ES on every piece that you can, which is why we choose Sintrek. Sintrek giving a lot of energy shield on a fairly cheap pair of boots with 30 move speed and some dex as well to help us get our dexterity requirement. The amulet is going to be Presence of Chayula with Tranquility. Tranquility is very, very good. You cannot find it normally on the tree, although it shows in Path of Building. Gives 5 max ES, and increases and reductions to max energy shield will apply to spell damage at 30% of their value. That's what Transfiguration of Soul means. So this 239 increased energy shield, 239, we can multiply that by 0.3, which means that node gives us 71% increased spell damage. That is so powerful. We'll put that on Present Save Chayula to get a bunch of chaos resistance, gain 20% of our life converted to energy shield, and giving us stun immunity as well. Since you do get the stun immunity from Presence of Chayula, if you want, you can swap this over and get Profane Bloom, or you could get the Forbidden Power as well if you want a little more damage and a little bit more AoE. Also, on top of the presence of Chayula, if you want to be a little spicy and a bit of a memer, you can pick up the Withering Presence just for the 60 Chaos Resistance, bringing you extremely close to the Chaos Res cap of 75. But, you know, that's a little bit of a meme, but, yo, I'll leave that up to you, alright? For the ring, we're going to use Mark of the Shaper. This is important, and why I put Elder twice. We get up to 80 increased spell damage if our other ring is an Elder item. So, make sure your other ring is an Elder item, or this is useless, and you might as well not use it. That's a lot of spell damage. Also, we have a 20% chance to trigger a volatile anomaly on kill, which is another of those little kind of, which is that little damage over time effect on the Shaper fight. Those balls that kind of put that almost Vortex-like thing on the ground, we get that, which is pretty cool, and it kind of stacks up with our Vortex, gives us a little more damage, but mainly it's for that 80 increased spell damage on here. On our ring, you want literally an Elder ring, but none of the Elder mods because they all suck for this build. So just get an Elder ring that has ES and some resistance, because we're using so many uniques, you need to get as much resistance on your ring and your belt as possible. And on the belt, we're going to use Defense Catalyst on a crystal belt, giving it a ton more flat max energy shield. And if you can, the Shaper influenced modifier that gives increased energy shield from body armor is very nice, but not needed. It doesn't provide that much energy shield. It's just a bit of a min-max. Getting just a crystal belt with a nice flat ES roll and whatever res you need is the priority. The Shaper is just a cool flex to link to your friends. Rumi's Concoction we're still going to use because we're trying to hit that max spell block and now max attack block that we're low life. And we'll also use a Taste of Hate to take 20 less cold damage and to take 20 of fizz damage as cold. So 20% of physical damage we take is going to be mitigated by 75%, right? Because it's taken as cold. We've got 75 cold res. That's pretty good. That is pretty good. We'll combine this with a Basalt Flask for another 15 fizz damage reduction and Quartz for some extra dodge, still using that Quicksilver Flask. Now, if you wanted to go the damage version, just try to see exactly what large clusters I have here. Honestly, you might want to just drop the Blast Freeze or the Widespread Destruction. The Deep Chill is super, super good and very important to get. So if you have to get a large cluster that just has this, that's totally fine. But this is one of the only changes between the two trees. And to get that, we do have to drop the block. And you see me path away from all of the shield stuff. I path out of some energy shield, and we do have to pick up a few more kind of stat nodes as well. You can drop the strength and you can drop this if you need, but it's on there just in case you don't have the stats. But unfortunately, we do have to drop the max block to have enough points to do a full cluster setup. But at that point, you've got 8,700 energy shield. You've still got some nice attack block, all right spell and whatnot, dodge and block. You should be fine. But ultimately, it's up to you. You can always go back and respec the block if you don't like that damage boost, but survivability loss. Anyway, that's it for the Cold Occultist. I hope you guys have a blast with this build. It should be a very good one to slow, chill, freeze, ultimately drain the life of all 10 bosses at the same time with all those vortexes being spammed everywhere. All right, meet me at Twitch, come to the YouTube or Twitch live stream. I'm streaming both. All right, show up. If you got some questions, ask them. If you want to say, hey man, nice build, I'd appreciate it. All right, I'll see you guys there though. Bye. Subscribe, by the way.